Today we are honored to have with us Rabbi Yosef Yitzchok Holzman, the Rav of the community in East Flatbush, and the Rabbi of SUNY Downstate, who will conclude for us the Tractate of Zavochim. Without further ado, Rabbi Holtzman.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Hecht. As we conclude Mesechta Zavochim, the Tractate of Zavochim is the first one of Kodashim. It's very, very appropriate for this time. The end of Zavochim talks about, in the Mishnah first we learned about the differences in places where brought korbanos, sacrifices to Hashem, based on the location of the Mishkan, Beis HaMikdash. As the Mishnah describes, and this is also brought in the Rambam Maimonides in the beginning of the laws of Beis HaBchira, that at first, prior to the construction of the Mishkan in the Midbar, all places where a person wanted to bring a sacrifice was permissible. You just built a bama, an altar, and on it you brought your korban sacrifice. And so did Noach and our forefathers, Avraham, Yitzchok, and Yaakov, etc. But after the construction of the Mishkan, the tabernacle, which was erected by Moshe Rabbeinu in the second year exiting of Mitzrayim, all korbanos was strictly performed only on the Mizbeach, on the altar of the Mishkan. And all private bombers were outlawed for the entire 39 years that they stayed in the Midbar in the desert. After 40 years of wandering in the desert, Yeshua brought the Yidden into Eretz Yisrael. The Mishkan was stationed in a town called Gilgal for 14 years. 7 years of wartime conquering the entire Holy Land, and the other 7 years it took to distribute to each tribe their lot. As long as the Mishkan was stationed in the Gilgal, since it wasn't permanent home, the prohibition of not bringing sacrifices on private altar was permitted. And at that time, you were able to bring sacrifices on private bamos. Thereafter, those 14 years, the Mishkan went to a town called Shiloh, and it got a real construction, meaning the walls were not built from stones. Although the rooftop was still covered by curtains, the Mishkan was stationed in Shiloh for 369 years. And all this time that the Mishkan was in Shiloh, the laws of private altar, small bimos, were outlawed. After close to 370 years, the Pelishtim went to war with Am Yisrael and got hold of the Aaron, the Ark. And as the high priest Eli HaKohen heard of this horrible news, he fell, broke his neck, and died. After the destruction of Shiloh, the Mishkan went to a town called Nov for 13 years, and thereafter for 44 years in a town called Givon. Those years the Mishkan was in Nov and Givon, the prohibition of not bringing sacrifices on small bamos was lifted, and once again it was permitted to bring korbanos on private altar. Finally, after the 57 years of the Mishkan being in Nov and Givon, Shloime HaMelech, King Solomon, built the Beis HaMikdash, the first holy temple, and thereafter it's never permissible to bring any sacrifice on any private altar. You may only bring a korban in the Beis HaMikdash, no matter if it's erected or it's destroyed. Small bamos are outlawed. In the time when we were permitted to bring korbanos and small bamos, like prior to having the Mishkan, the time of the Gilgal, and the time of Nov and Givon, there were still many differences between having your korban on the Mizbeach, Bimo Gdoilo, and on the Bomektano, the private altar. For example, on the Mizbeach, the work was done only by a Kohen, a priest, and needed special clothes, many other details that were exclusive when bringing the korban and when bringing a Boma Gdoilo. In contrast, on a Boma Ktana, private altar, the work could have been performed by Bechores, firstborn, and many other details was not exclusive. However, says the Mishnah, there are three things that are equal in both bamos. What are they? Zeman. Zeman means pigul. Pigul means a sacrifice which becomes invalid because of an improper thought at the time of its slaughter, of offering, etc. And the second thing is noiser. Noiser means sacrifice that have time limits, one day and night, 2 days and a night, and it remains past the designated time. That's noiser, left over, and may no longer be eaten. And then there's the third thing is tumah. Tumah means impure. Either the person is impure or the meat is impure. So whichever is, so it says the Mishnah, Shovin, Azman v'anoiser v'atomei, Shovin zebo zeh. This is equal on both. The Bima Gedola or Bima Ketana have the same laws. Asks the Gemara, why are those three details also by Bima Ketana? Tonu Rabbonon, minayin la'ases zman b'boma ketana k'boma gedola. Why do you say that a small boma, the private altar, has the same thing like a big altar? Why not? Says the Gemara, and I'll tell you why not. Because let's look inside the words. The Gemara says the ha'omer Torah, because the Torah says like this: Lon yisorif v'yoytze yisorif. If it's noiser, if it's left over, you have to burn it. If it goes out of the perimeter, if it goes out of the space where it belongs, it also has to be burned. What do we know? Ma yoitze, when it goes out of perimeter, the bomber, in a regular bomber, is no problem because it's not limited in space. The Mizbeach, it's limited in time, in a place, but a regular bomber is all over. So kosher, aflon kosher, then it should be also kosher by noiser. And if by noiser is kosher, then it should be also by pigul and also by tomei, by bomber. So what do you need to have a proof? Obviously. Says the Gemara, no, v'lav kal v'chomer. Don't you think there is a kal v'chomer? Kal v'chomer means a prairie, or actually in English it's say madoch. Madoch, if you say me'oifos means who? Me'oifos, birds. There's a sacrifice, that regular sacrifice, beef, behemoth, korban, and then there's a sacrifice of birds. Oila, chatos is also only birds. But there is a rule by birds that it's less of an issue than to bring a korban. What is it? Ma'oifos she'ein amum poistel behen. Blemish. You're not allowed to bring a sacrifice with a blemish. If there's a blemish on the sacrifice, it's apostle. It's not permissible. And oif, the Gemara in Tmura says, there is no problem with a blemish in an oif. Obviously, if the wing, if the foot, or if an eye is missing, a big blemish, then you cannot. But small blemish is no problem. Says the Gemara. Oif is birds, that the movement is not poisel. But nevertheless, zman poisel bohen, if you have a bad thought, if you have a thought that you're not going to have it on time or something, it becomes pigul, kochi bo miktano, bring a sacrifice on a small bomber, which is a problem with a blemish, amun poisel bohen, then it's much harsher than einoi din shezman poisel bohen, then for sure pigul should have been. So what do you need to have a proof? Because oifes. Says the Gemara, no, it's not. I can tell you something else. And oif, you think it's harsher, it has also a disadvantage. What disadvantage has it? Oifes, mala oifes, shekein ein azor kosher. A bird is different. Only a coin is allowed to bring a sacrifice of a bird. But a bomaktana, we just said before, that you don't need a priest. You could also have a firstborn, someone that's not kosher. So if so, toimar beboma, you know, toimar beboma ktana, what are you going to tell me in a regular small bomber, shazor kosher, that zor is kosher, you're going to bring the tloyei zman possible, so you're going to tell me that zman is not going to be possible? You can't learn from oifus. Says the Gemara, therefore, I need a proof. You know what's the proof? The proof is going to be Talmud Loimar, it says in Posuk, V'zois toiras zevach hashlomim. It says in the Posuk, this is the law, this is the Torah of sacrificing of the korbanos of the shlomim. which means all Shlomim. Rashi said kol, all Shlomim. So all Shlomim have the same thing. Doesn't matter if it says laso zman to make a pigul, also noise, also tome to make it bomek tano, kizman bomek toila. The time, if you think only, or if you leave it over time, the same way that the bomek tano is going to be a problem, the same issue that we say zman bebomo gedoilo with a big the mizbeach applies the same thing, and with that, hadran aloch poros chatos uslikolo Mesechta Zavochim, we finish the perek of poros chatos, and we finish the Mesechta of Zavochim. Mesechta Zavochim is korbonis. Very appropriate meaning to say that we don't have korbanos now, but Avraham Avinu, the Eibishter, told him, when you learn about korbanos, it's going to be like bringing korbanos. And we say, Hadron aloch poros chatos. We want to have return. Poros chatos, the Pora Aduma is going to return to us. When we're going to learn about Mesechta Zavochim, about the korbanos, Mesechta Zavochim also goes that we don't want it to have Zavochim, Shchita, and all the problems that we have, but we should have Menucha v'Nachlo. Menucha v'Nachlo is like we just learned before. Shiloh, it means Menucha. Nachlo goes on Yerushalayim. That means that we are over already that time of Slikol Mesechta Zavochim, and we should have the Menucha, the real rest, in such in the appropriate time of now, and have Nachlo, the ultimate, having the Beis HaMikdash, that will be able to bring all those korbanos. Hadron aloch parach chatos uslikol Mesechta Zavochim. Hadron.